That whole thing about teachers, now that we're recording, I'm on record, right? The stereotype about teachers being underpaid is ridiculous. They make good money. You shouldn't be thinking, oh, teachers are poor. No, they're not.
If you're in Finland, that is.
Some of them can make six figures here in Dallas, depending on what they teach and where they teach. So it's not, they don't make bad money. They're certainly not poor. And they're in a union, so they can't be fired. I can, though, because I'm not in a union. I don't think we are here at Richland at all, which is a good thing. Okay, let's get back to Unity. We had created the water. Pretty neat. I'm noticing some lag, so I may actually turn my water off if it gets too bad. But for now, I'll go ahead and save, because I can see my little asterisk up there. And what's left? I think we've got our terrain fairly well figured out. So what next? Let's do our first-person controller work. So I'm going to find a good spot where we can start. And actually, I think I covered up all of my grass, which is unfortunate. So let me put some in real quick. What was your question?
How did we create the water? I don't remember.
You just drag it out. You just find it in the hierarchy, or the asset hierarchy over here, and just drag out daylight water, and that's all there is to it. You just resize it. I had a lot of trouble resizing mine because these computers are kind of slow. Plus, I'm running a video capture tool, which is also a drag on resources. Okay, I'm going to put some grass in here real quick just so I have some to look at. Bigger brush size, go a little faster. Okay, good deal. That ought to do it. Alright, now for our first person controller, I'm just going to use the stock first person controller. You can make your own if you want. It takes a little while, but you can. We need to import our assets for that, so just as before, import package and find character controller at the top. Okay, so there's two of them. There's a first person and a third person controller. I'm just going to bring them both in. Who knows, if we knock this out fast enough, maybe we'll jump to a third person. But probably we're going to save that for next time. Okay, it brought them in. So find character controllers under standard assets. And there's your first person and your third person controller. Why they went with cardinal and ordinal separately, I have no idea. That's the kind of thing that would drive me crazy. Okay, I'm just going to drag out my first person controller and drop them on the terrain. And let me find him. So we've got a little bit of a problem here. Naturally, if we play this, we're going to have a problem. He's going to fall through the terrain, right? So let's fix that.
You go to assets for that one?
Yes. So we'll bring it up till he's just a little bit above, and this is one of those things where you're probably going to have to play with it to get it just right. Okay, well, we've got him above ground. That's great. There's a few more adjustments that we need to make. At this point, we have two cameras. There's nothing technically wrong with that, but we don't really need this main camera any longer. So if you open up the first-person controller, you'll see what I'm talking about. This is a prefab that comes with a couple of things attached to it. There's an empty game object for graphics, and there is the main camera here. So now we have two cameras. We don't need two cameras for this endeavor. So I'm just going to get rid of the second camera. now we've got the main camera that's attached to the first-person controller.
Chris really does nice.
Now we can click run, and we can see our grass swaying in the breeze. And we can use WASD to move about. We can even press the space bar to jump. Walk to the edge of the water.
Automatic colliding. Look at all this stuff we made in just a few hours.
Yeah. Looks like I didn't put my water down very low. But that's something to review. Look, I'm looking up through the bottom of the water now if I jump up. So if you want to do an underwater scene, you're going to have to do some more work, or you're going to make a trip to the asset store. I had a student 2 semesters back that did an underwater scene. Pretty neat.
How you doing the skybox again?
The skybox is under Edit and Render Settings. And that's assuming you have imported the skybox packages, or you have made your own
Or I
skybox.
can totally just use the constructor tech.
Sure.
Of course, that'll just turn out something terrifying.
Yes. I rarely need to go outside of the skyboxes that come with it. I have one project where we do quite a bit of levels in HE double hockey sticks. And so that would be a different sky, right? Go down to hell, fight Satan, come back, hopefully. Nah, that's been done. I used to do it for the third-person tutorial. Maybe we'll resurrect that next class. Well, the challenge was to come up with something interesting to do with the wrench man, right? If you don't know who the wrench man is, you'll meet him next week, probably.
Do I create an empty and then first person controller?
I didn't. I just dragged the first-person controller out into the scene and then positioned him.
How can you keep your mouse cursor in the center of the screen?
What do you mean?
Rotate about, like if I had a crosshair
Mm-hmm.
for my point
Yeah.
control.
Yeah. You would,
Looks like
well,
it's doing it.
we'll do that.
Okay.
I think we'll do it, if I remember how to do it. It's changed in 4.6, and I'm wondering if I even remember how to do it the old way.
Almost like it's doing it automatically. I probably got it out of whack. But it really double y-axis.
Yeah, it's gooey texture, isn't it? Okay, so we've got the basis for a first-person controller game here, right? Pretty straightforward, pretty easy. Yeah, these are things that you can adjust. So if you want to try to climb some of your creations, you'll find that you'll be able to climb some of them, but not all of them. So that's something you'll want to take into account.
Basic assets and a couple of really bad models, I can make a Sid Meier's Pirates one.
Of course. You'd probably want to find ways to keep them from jumping off of the edge of the world, right? So why don't we do that real quick? That's easy.
Sure did.
Creating an invisible box collider.
Yeah,
Yay!
exactly. That's pretty much it.
But I'm not doing it, so I'm jumping away. Whee!
Alright, that worked.
See how fast it disappears.
I should make my game a first person shooter. I'm started thinking. With guns and.
Did you ever play Sid Meier's Pirates?
No.
No. Fun game.
It was a fun game.
Naturally, I've heard of it, but I've never played it.
I want to get Sid Meier's Beyond Earth or After Earth, whichever was it.
Beyond Earth.
I want to get that one so bad. It's like Sid Meier's Alpha Centauri and Sid 5 had a baby.
Which to me almost means I don't want to buy it because it's not going to be that different than what I'm used to, right? Okay. Plus, I feel weird that Sid Meier's puts his name on everything. I think that's odd.
It's annoying. Look up the list, it's under
Sid Meier's!
not
Sid Meier's!
Meier.
I'm Sid Meier's! I'm super awesome! Of course, I might do that with my works. I'm Bruce Van Horn. Awesome game, man.
One game and the studio just keeps remaking that game.
I know. Hey, but you know, good for him. He's made millions of dollars off of it. More power to him.
His name on these things?
Yeah.
But
Okay.
At least it's a good game and it's not your standard issue Spunk Gargle Wee Call of Duty.
Fair enough.
So let's prevent this guy from going off too far off the edge. I'm just going to create an empty box, an empty cube. And I'll position it and I'll stretch it out. And I probably really need to account for the areas that he might actually be able to traverse. Of course, that would be a matter of testing, right? You definitely want to use a box for this, by the way, and not a plane. Because... Ooh, I'm higher than I thought I was. Because collision detection happens on a frame-by-frame basis, and it would be possible to get through a two-dimensional surface because of that little frame lag that you might run into. So it's a good idea to use boxes, actual cubes for these, rather than two-dimensional planes with a collider on them.
I have a dumb question.
Chocolate chip.
That's good. That's good. Why did it build terrain with origin at its lower left-hand corner instead of in the middle? When I reset everything, it's like offset.
Yeah, I don't think that's a dumb question, and I don't really know the answer to it. I've been struggling with that a little bit too. If you noticed when I went in and tried to do height, let me see if I can go back to it. Wow. If I set the height at 70, I would expect it to draw something at a height of 70, but instead it gave me a depression. So there's something about the way it's doing the coordinates that I'm not familiar or frankly comfortable with.
Right. And
But
yeah, it's elevated it.
right.
And it looks like it's put its origin. It's at the lower left-hand corner.
So I just struck that. Well, that's an oddity. I'll file that under weird and not worry about it. And I think you know what to do here. Just turn the mesh renderer off. And that ought to do it. Now I ought not to be able to go too far past this. And there's the edge. That's as far as I can go. And I've cleverly put it on a berm so that you don't see the edge of the world, because that looks weird. That even works nicely because you can't really tell that it drops off there. Okay, yay me. I think I'll go put my name on all my games now. Bruce Van Horn's Outdoor Simulation. I'd buy it.
$49.99.
Exactly. I like it.
Just make it go and be.
If it pre-order now, what kind of DLC do you get on Steam?
I have no idea.
The rain simulator? Rainy day simulator?
Oh, you mean on mine?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Big FPS.
I'm going to go ahead and turn my water off because I think that's the cause of most of my woes here. All right, I'm going to go back to my first-person controller, and I'm going to bring in my... Actually, I haven't downloaded it yet, have I? Let's go out to... Blackboard and go into first-person shooters and terrains. It's under labs, and there's the gun hand that I showed you earlier that I created in Poser. Make sure you click save file. You don't want to open it in Visual Studio, that would be weird. Okay, I'm just going to drag it and drop it into my assets. It'll come in. And there's our arm. Which for some reason reminds me of Trogdor the Burninator. Oh good, you are cultured people.
You know Homecoming Runners contract?
Yes. It just so happens that I started a project at work that's going to be an email demon, and I decided to name it Strong Bad. So it's going to be Project Strong Bad. And I'm the only one in the office that will get that joke.
Does she wear a wrestling mask and boxing gloves?
Yes. Because all of my systems allow me to put icons that represent the project. So like my infrastructure project at work has a picture of Wheatley from Portal 2.
Professor, I'm sorry to digress. My guy is running through his box collider
That's not cool.
on the edge of the
Where in the where on the Blackboard do you put for a download?
It is under Labs, and then go to the bottom, find first-person shooter and terrains, and there it is.
I thought you downloaded it.
Okay, so we've got our gun hand. I'll come look at your box problem here pretty soon.
Oh, thank you. Get on my box. If I get on my Rambo.
Okay, I'm going to drag it out here. This is going to be really surreal. And let's line him up with our camera. This is going to be the fun part. For this one, you might want to grab the game view and kind of drag it off, maybe down here, so that you can see both at the same time. Wow, I don't remember it being that bad when I tried it earlier with the transform being in an odd place. I'm sure I can adjust that if I were motivated to do so. Gosh, there we go. There we go. That was blind luck right there, fellas. That's what you're going for. You want to line it up. Don't go too far because that looks weird, right? It's going to look weird no matter what because we need to adjust the clipping planes on our camera. But something like that. Once you get it in a good spot, you should go ahead and parent the gunshot to the main camera like so. And now they are one and the same, and hopefully when we play this, Our gun will track
First person controller or the specifically?
the camera. Now we've got our gun. It's not perfect, but that's okay. It needs to be rotated and scaled and played with and fussed over.
What are we going to be shooting at here?
Well, I don't know. We'll come up with something.
Deer?
I kind of no, I wouldn't do that. Unless the deer can shoot back, that might be a good game. Actually, I have no problem with hunting. It just hadn't occurred to me to shoot a deer. Zombies, ninjas. Actually, I was just gonna do like a milk bottle or something. I hadn't thought that far ahead, to be honest with you.
This looks kind of stupid running around this savannah with a gun.
Yeah, it kind of does. I regret not making a sword, but the sword isn't really all that interesting with respect to animation, so I want to show you Mechanum next. And you wouldn't, just by point of reference, if I had a sword, I wouldn't animate it as an FBX. I would go ahead and animate it in Unity, because really that's just a back and forth motion. With this one, you actually want the hand to move and the trigger to pull, and if I'd really put a lot of effort into it, the slide should come back on the gun, and maybe we'd eject a bullet out of it. All of that's things we could do if we had all the time in the world, not an hour left in the class. So we'll see if we can finish the objective, which is to create most of a first-person shooter in 4 hours. So far, we're on track. So again, that doesn't look perfect, but it looks okay. Okay, let's figure out how to make the gun actually shoot. Look at this, we're 3 hours in, we haven't written a single script yet. I don't know if that's good or bad. I'm having a little bit of withdrawal, so let's go with our gunshot. Let's add a component. Let's create a new script. Don't forget to change the script type from JavaScript to C#.
I think blue as an option.
Yeah, you don't really want to do that.
Where did that come from?
The Boo language. It's a variant of Python.
I mean, why is it here now? What's it before?
Yeah, it was. They've always supported JavaScript, C#, and Boo. I'll call it gun controller.
Are you putting that on the first-person controller itself?
Nope, I'm putting it on the actual gun.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so we've got our gun controller. Actually, we're a little bit ahead. We're not ready to write code yet. We need to set up our states in Mechanum before we can do anything else. So let's do that. Let's go over to Gunshot. Click it in the prefab down here in the assets area, as opposed to in the hierarchy. We want the actual prefab. And we need to mess around with the import settings a little bit. So really, we just need to go into the Animations tab. If you were doing a full-blown rigged character, you would have a lot more work to do, but we just have one animation in this thing. We're going to keep it real simple. So we'll do another tutorial, a complicated one on a fully rigged character another day. I kind of like easing you into Mechanum because it can be kind of scary if you just jump to the really ridiculous tutorial that I think, I say it's ridiculous. It's a good tutorial. It's just a bit much for someone that's never seen anything like it before. So this is a much gentler introduction. So let's just do this one thing. You'll notice that we have animation set up by default from 0 to 30, which is totally wrong, right? So let's do 2 things. Well, let's do 3 things. First of all, let's take this one out. We don't need it. Actually, sorry, we have to do this. Actually, we can just rename this one. That'll be okay. We need 2 of them. We need one for the still where he's just walking around, and that's just frame 1 to frame 1, right? So we'll just use this one, and we'll call it, I don't know, we'll just call it still. And that one goes from frame 1 or frame 0 to frame, I guess you could go 0 to 0. We'll see if it gives us any trouble. Okay, it wants us to go to 0.01, which is fine. And then the second one, we'll call that one something really interesting like bang. And that's at 7. Actually, this is time, isn't it? Not frames. Can we see? Let's see. Well, it won't much matter. We can go ahead and set it to 7. I guess I didn't realize it wasn't frames, it was seconds, but that's okay. I'll just put it to 7. Because I did that when I tested it and it worked fine. So we can click the preview and we can see our animation playing down here in the bottom where he's squeezing the trigger. And the gun rises ever so slightly and off to one side, so there's a little bit of a kick. So we've got still, which doesn't do anything. He just sits there. And bang. Okay. I got a warning. I'm not going to worry about it too much. So with our 2 clips defined, now we need an animator, which I think we already have. Let's go into the animator window. And let's pick the one in. Oh. Forgot to apply. I often forget to apply. I get so focused on explaining all this stuff that I forget. Nicely, it reminds me. So let's go ahead and click apply so that the settings are saved. And we have an animator. Let me see. Oh, it's going to be on this. And maybe we need a controller. That's what we need is controller. Okay, so let's make a controller. Right click in assets, create. Whoops. And find an animator controller. We'll call it gunshot controller. There we go. Okay, very similar to what we did last time. We don't really need any state. We just need 2 states. Which I will cleverly call still and bang. Okay, we just need a transition from still to bang, and from bang back to still. And we need 1 parameter. In this case, it's going to be a trigger. I don't know if that's irony or appropriateness. I'll call my trigger is shooting. And I'll leave it to false, which means I won't check that box right there. So by quick way of explanation, if you don't know what a trigger is, you're familiar with floats, ints, and bools. Those are pretty straightforward. All you're doing in those cases is you're setting the parameter from a script, right? So it can either take a floating point number, an integer, or a true-false value. A trigger is a true-false value that essentially, as soon as you trigger it, it does whatever it's supposed to do, and then it immediately goes back to false. So you set it to true, it does something, and then it goes back to false, which is perfect for us. We want it to play the animation of the trigger pulling, and then essentially we want it to immediately go back to its resting state. So it is absolutely perfect for guns, sword swings, anything along those lines where it's just going to play it and then immediately go back. Bit of a time saver. Okay, so we've got our is shooting. We're going to change this transition, the one that goes from shoot to bang. And I'll change my condition to is shooting. And that's pretty much all I really need to do. I don't really need to change the other one, just because of the way this works. And if you think about it, really, the way that this is set up is it's going to play the animation and then it's going to go back as soon as this time hits. So you're kind of covered both ways. That's what we want it to do anyway. So that's pretty much it. Very simple two-state animation. So let's go back to our gunshot in our hierarchy. We've created our gunshot controller. We have our animator component, but we need to add the controller we created to it. So let's drag that and drop it on there like so. Oh, I forgot to, you should have reminded me, guys. I forgot to set up the animations, didn't I? Okay, let's take care of that. Let's go back over here, click on your state, your still state. Open up your gunshot in your hierarchy, or in your assets, I'm sorry, in your assets. You have your two animations there, still and bang. I think you can figure out which one goes where. Still goes on still, bang goes on bang. Otherwise we'll get a whole lot of nothing. Now we're ready for that. Is everybody kept up okay? We're ready? You guys are on it tonight. Good job. All right.
We'll be reviewing video.
Or you gave up 30 minutes ago. I hope that's not the case. All right, so let's switch back over to our scene and find our gunshot. And here's our script. Let's double click that and edit this guy. Okay. Now how do we want to do this? Our first person controller already has the space bar, right? So what axis should we use to get this done? Let's go cheat a little bit and go look at what's available. So let's go to project settings. Whoops. Let's go to project settings and input and open up the axes tree. And what do you think?
Fire 1.
Fire 1. All right. That chair is low. All right, so we're going to use Fire 1. And that is mouse 0 or left control. So we know that when we go test the sucker. So let's go to our script. And we'll put it in update. So how would we do it if it were a button press? Let's just try to relate it to something we've already done. Do you remember? Had something to do with input axis. I'll give you a little bit of a hint. Well, we used input before, input.getAxis specifically. That would actually work here. We could say if input.getAxis, and usually that's what we use for like the keys or the accelerometer or something along those lines. But actually there's a better way to do it. This one we can do get button down. Or maybe even get mouse button down, but get button down works. Now be careful when you're dealing with different frameworks for different platforms. I'm not entirely sure get button down would work for an iPad game. So just bear in mind that you really want to study your input options depending on what platform you're working with. So we'll say get button down, Fire 1. Okay, we'll keep it simple, make sure this works. Let's do debug.log. Whoops. Bang. And I missed a parenthesis here. Okay, let's start simple. Let's make sure that works. Make sure you're in your game window and you should see bang appear down here at the bottom, or if you have a console window open. You should see lots of them. Everybody good? Was that a no?
That was a no. Oh, no.
Did you get an error or does it just not work?
I got an error. Now we'll see if you put it. No, now it won't work.
I like errors.
You know, they just don't work.
instructor, if I walk
Yes.
around behind you,
You
if
should,
it wasn't working before, I have the ability to manipulate universal chaos, and things just fall into line when I'm looking. As soon as I leave,
I don't think that's supposed to be
yeah, as soon as I leave, none of your assignments will work anymore. So once you get out into the industry, you need to hire me to come stand behind you at your station when your managers come by to review your work.
So that was your plan.
What
All
if,
along.
Like, our little robots with cameras, and like all the robots were coming behind us.
Exactly.
And while we're like doing our work, and when we turn them in too, so all our work actually works.
I'll get one of those Segway deals with an iPad on it so that I can be everywhere at once and just follow you around.
Everybody gets hundreds because everything works.
Exactly.
Poor guy's thumbs broke.
That's why people exactly. No, he was born that way. He's a mutant. Yeah, that's the ticket.
There we go.
Okay, how do we make him shoot something?
Pew, pew, pew.
We're pretty much to the end of my ideas. Let's see. What do we do? Oh, okay. Let's think this through. How are we going to get that animator thing to shoot? Let's do what we usually do. Create a private variable of type animator. I say usually, I guess we've only done this once. Old hat to you, right? Really, I could do this in one line. I just like reminding you. Private animator, then we want to get a reference to animator on start. So let's set animator equal to probably the most important function you need to remember. Get component and its variance. We have to give it a type. Animator. You can only have one animator component on your game object, so this works out. Oh, I have to spell it right. I was like, why is it red? I didn't spell it correctly. There we go. It's like, don't give me that. I know it's right. All right, now we've got the animator. We can do whatever we'd like to the animator. I'm going to leave my debug in there. And I'll remind you that the methods for affecting that animator component all start with the word set. You can set a boolean, you can set a float, you can set an integer, and you can set a trigger. Apparently you can also set IK position, weight, rotation, and a bunch of other stuff that I have no idea what it does. Set the trigger. You have to give it the name of the trigger. What do we call it? I don't remember.
Is shooting.
Is shooting? Yes, thank you. I almost said bang. I was like, no, it's not bang. It's... There we go. And note that there's no value because there's only one thing you can do with a trigger. At least with a Boolean, you can set it to true or false. This, all you're doing is you're literally setting off the trigger.
And that's all you do?
That's it. Easy peasy. Okay, we should be able to see him pulling the trigger. Gun's rising a little bit. And that's pretty much all you need. If you want to do more, you can.
Animator has not been initialized.
If you wanted to make shells pop out of it, I thought about doing that. That'd probably take a little while. You just make a shell, you know, in Max or whatever, Blender, or find one. Just instantiate it right next to the slide as soon as you pull the trigger. Easy stuff, man. Impossible. Okay. Let me pause the video recording and I will go around and see if I can help people. Welcome back. Orson Welles once made an entire film out of nothing but stock clips. Of course, he's Orson Welles, so you know. He can get away with it. Okay, everybody's is working now, so let's do one more thing before our class is over. It would be nice if we had something to shoot at. So I'm going to find my first-person controller and go to them. Kind of get me in the area here. Now, ideally, what I would really want to make is like a fence or something. I kind of envision making a fence with some beer bottles on it. I mean root beer bottles. But since we're low on time, let's make just a box with our ubiquitous evil sphere on top of it. Actually, let's do it this way. Maybe we'll get lucky and they'll come in the same place. There we go. Now all I have to do is move it up. A little nicer. Okay, so the sphere is going to be our target. I'm going to add to our sphere of evil. Sorry, there's no evil component. Maybe someone should make one. We need a rigid body so that we can affect it with physics. And I'm going to close some of these up so I have a little more room. And I'm going to need a script to have some sort of effect when it gets hit. So I'm going to call this target controller. Alright. Whoops. This will be a pretty short script. I guess you need to decide what you want to happen when it gets hit, but we'll do something really simple. We'll do public void. How about target hit? And I'm just going to keep it real simple for now. I'll do I need a reference to the rigid body controller on this thing. I could have done the same thing I did earlier, create a private variable at the top, initialize it. I'm going to do the short version, just a one-liner here to get it. I'll call it RB, which makes me hungry for barbecue for some reason. Get component of type rigid body. As usual, there can only be one rigid body on a game object, so it's safe to use get component singular. Bless you. And let's add a little bit of force to this, so we'll say RB add force. Incidentally, this is a good time to point out that there are really, let me think, probably three widely used ways to move an object in Unity. We saw one last time. We moved the transform. That's how we got our little professor guy to walk around on the screen. We changed the transform. The second way is adding force to its rigid body if it has one. Obviously, if you're going to use this method, it has to have a rigid body. And this is reminiscent of the exercise that you did in intro when you did the marble game. So if you didn't do the marble game in intro, you might want to spend a couple of hours at some point doing that because it's a worthwhile exercise. The difference really is moving the transform is essentially a teleporter, right? You're instantaneously moving it from one place to another. If you affect the rigid body, you're using physics to move the object. And in the case of, what we're about to do, but more so in the marble game, you actually got a ball to roll around. So it's a different interaction. If I had moved the transform on a ball, it wouldn't roll, it would just instantaneously transform all over the screen. But if I used add force, it will actually roll the ball because that's part of the physics engine. And then the third way is a funny word called lerping, and we'll do lerping next week. No, I didn't make that up. Okay, so I'm going to add force. There's a couple of ways that I can do this. I can give it a vector 3, give it a vector 3 in a force mode. I think I'm going to take the easy way out and just give it 3 numbers, which I will artificially state as 25, 300, and 25. Obviously, we might want to change that later, maybe randomize them, but this should shoot our target up in the air and to the side and to the front or the back, whichever way it's facing. Actually, you might want to take that into consideration, right? Which way is it facing? Which way should it move if it got hit by a bullet? Popping it up in the air is cool, but you would want it to go in the same direction as the bullet. So that might be a detail you might want to take into consideration. Okay, once it pops up in the air, the target's been hit. It's not unusual at this point to go ahead and destroy the object rather than leave the ground littered with, well, I don't know, it might be fun to litter with dead bodies, but let's not litter since this is an inanimate object. We're going to go ahead and do a destroy on the game object. We're going to give it a bit of a delay, say 3 seconds. Give it enough time to hit the ground, roll around for a second, and then it just will cease to exist. Okay, now I could go over into the other script and start writing something that's probably going to be a little bit complicated. Before I do that, I want to make sure this works. So let me show you another trick. Oops, it's void, if it ever gives it back. Void on mouse down will actually register, if it has a collider on it, it will register a mouse click. Pretty handy. Okay, let's see if we got any problems. I don't think we have. Let's try it out. Okay, hopefully I didn't put it too far away. Oh, there it is. Wait a minute. Oh, there it is up there. A little bit of a geometry problem here, don't I? All right. This will be a little hard, but I'm going to orient my mouse on there. I'm going to click on it, and I should see the cube pop off and then cease to be. So that works. I need to fix my orientation a little bit here.
You do zero sight this weapon.
Yes. Yes, we do.
The point of aim is not point of impact.
Okay, let me get this closer to the ground. There we go. Bang. Not bad. Okay, one more thing. Now let me see if I can remember how to do this since we have a little bit of time left. This has completely changed in 4.6. That's why I say let me see if I can remember how to do it, because I've been using 4.6 for 2 months now. And I'm old, I forget things quickly. What should we call it? Reticle? What would a normal person call a reticle? Sight?
Yeah, gun sight.
Gun sight.
Crosshairs.
Perfect. As long as I've got one that's a bit assassin-y, but let's go see if it's usable. I really want one that is transparent. How about transparent being reticle? There we go. Perfect. So I googled transparent ping reticle and just clicked the very first one that I got. Hopefully you got the same result. Save the image. I think I'll change the name. Crosshair.
Is that transparent?
Yes. You can tell by the dots.
Oh, I see that.
It's a little hard to see on the screen, but it's very apparent on the monitor. Desktop. Drag it in. Now, if I remember correctly, it should be GUI texture. And we need the crosshair. Let's see if this works. Oh, we need to be looking at it through the game view. There it is. Okay, I'll put it back to where it was. Okay. Boy, that's ugly. It's probably square, so it probably should be 64 by 64. Oh, that's the pixel inset. I don't care about that. I want the width and the height. Here we go. Let's just make them the same. How about we go
All
first?
the H's are
64
delayed, you should change that.
and 64. There we go. That looks a little better.
You put that on the sprite or something?
Good question. That's why it looks goofy. I'm just happy that it worked, man.
So is that
Let me go into project. This is another thing that's changed, so let's see. Crosshair here, texture, switch it to GUI, and it should look a lot better.
how do you import it in?
Actually, it looks the same to me. That's the hardest problem again. I just dragged it in. I just dragged the ping in and dropped it into the project assets. But you really should click on it and come in here and change whatever you need to change. You can try a couple of different things and see if it cleans up at all. I keep expecting that to be my game window. Texture probably won't work. Sprite, maybe. I don't know if it'll help. That looks better. That looks a lot better, actually. I'm gonna go with Sprite. In 4.6, we have a new UI system, and it works completely differently. There's different selections here that aren't even, these aren't even available anymore. Some of them aren't. And then come in here into the hierarchy. We'll probably want to change the name of this to Crosshair, and you can use the position. Remember, it goes from 0 to 1. That's why it's X and Y. It's not X and Z. That's why it's 0.5, 0.5. So you can adjust this, but remember it's 0 to 1, so it's going to move in jumpy increments. You also have pixel inset, which allows you to do fine tuning. So that will adjust it as well. So let's say if I did 0, 0 here. And then did a pixel inset, I would expect positive number to work. So usually what people do is they try to get close with the position, the X and Y, and then they do fine adjustments with pixel inset. So pixel inset is from the position, and it's for allowing you to get pixel perfect results. So now I'm at 0.5, 0.5, which is the middle, and then I've offset it by 53 by 23 pixels. That'll make it dead center, more or less. Okay, so we need a better way to do this part, right? Which is what I'm actually going to leave for your assignment due next week. So I will turn on the lights and tell you about it. There's a couple other things that I want to cover with you really quickly since we have 14 minutes left. I mentioned blackboarding. I mentioned, well shoot, now I'm blanking on the term. Let me go look. Billboarding. It's getting late, guys. Alright, so I'm going to shut the video off, and sorry guys if you didn't get the lecture part.